So the idea behind the main title was that there was a battle transmission from some kind of war heading out throughout the universe. And so we caught it. So this beginning with Yoda on this animal called the Kibuk is to really set up that there's a great war in the universe. The Clone Wars just began. And so here we have the separatist droids and all kind of the robot-y type creatures. The droids are all the bad guys. And here we have the Jedi, which are the good guys. And these are called the Hellfire droids. And so it's kind of the battle of good and evil. And here one of the kind of the lead general, Count Dooku. And he's recruiting evil to support him. And this is Illuminara and Barriss Offee, and here's Kit Fisto, and here's Mace Windu. So these are all great Jedi in the war, and right now they're all generals leading armies in the fights. And through some further episodes, future episodes, we see most of them battle with more detail. And here, of course, are our main heroes, Anakin and Obi-Wan.
So too grows the prowess of one most gifted student of the Force.
And Anakin's hand is cut off in the end of Attack of the Clones, and so we thought that was really cool to have a golden hand.
Building huge droid armies and massive warships. We must act quickly.
I agree. But who to send? Master Windu.
And it was really fun to establish the relationships between these characters, this is Senator Palpatine, who's the head guy, and him and Anakin have kind of bonded a lot. And now, of course, Obi-Wan and Yoda don't really think that Anakin's quite ready. But of course, they're not successful.
Such responsibility.
True, with his master a Padawan's place is, but undeniably strong he has.
And they kind of have the mentor and protege relationship, kind of like a father and son. And we really tried to make the clone troopers really cool. So these are the big armies and the walker tanks. And here Obi-Wan kind of reflects on his mentor, kind of his fatherly figure, Qui-Gon Jinn, who was a great Jedi in Phantom Menace. And these are the clone trooper fighters, which we were introducing first here. I don't think we've ever seen them before. And this was the introduction of Anakin's ship that he put extra thrusters on so he could fly in hyperspace. So he's got a real personalized craft, kind of like the pod racers that he did in Phantom Menace. And of course here we have the two characters. Now they're married, but it's all secret from the end of Attack of the Clones. So we kind of wanted to state it, but really subtly. So here in Chapter 2, one of their main goals in the beginning was to establish these new ARC troopers, who are kind of elite commando troopers from not as the normal clone troopers. So we kind of try to do it mysteriously.
I will join you.
And Obi-Wan Kenobi is the general here, so he's giving them commands for what their mission is going to be through these episodes. And the Red Commander, he's the leader of the clone troopers. And now we're in the hull of the Star Cruiser as they're heading off into battle.
It is your maturity. I've argued this before, but the decision has been made.
And of course, Anakin is always kind of worried about what Obi-Wan thinks about him. And he kind of jumped the gun. And the Star Cruisers here, this always feels really Star Wars-y, where we have a lot of Star Cruisers flying. And that's the planet Moonalist, where the battle's going to take place. And these are the IG space stations and the Geonosian fighters, which are the bad guy fighters, with the droid pilots inside. These ships coming out here are the ARC Trooper gunships. So each one carries probably about 20 or so clone troopers. And there in that one that on the gunship that peels off right here is where the ARC Troopers, the Special Elite Commando ARC Troopers, are heading off to their part of the story.
Evasive action!
And we have the droid protecting the city. So these are the same droids that we saw in Episode 1 and some of the Hellfire droids. And so the war has begun again. This is a banking city, so there's a lot of buildings that look like banks. So we kind of made them all very kind of Greek, because that's how banks are kind of, I think, thought of. And a little droid that's going to cause a lot of trouble.
Roger, roger.
So here we have the crashed gunship with the clone troopers, and here we have the separatist droids. So again, we're using a lot of the hand signals to really make it feel like they're military, because it is armies of clone troopers. And the little scope, you see, it's a heat-sensing scope, so they can sense the electricity and power of the droids behind the building. So he's doing the hand signals to bring the bazooka launcher out. And doing the ARC Troopers, I think, was really cool, because from the Star Wars movies, we really all liked stormtroopers. And so we really wanted to give them a really cool feeling. And he blasts his way inside this tank and blasts out, making it explode. And this little scanner device that's being used is kind of like a video camera throughout the whole city, so they can plan exactly where they're going. So now they see the object of where they have to go to is this giant cannon that is the major defense for where the kind of the generals, the bad guy generals, are inside, commanding all their troops. And so their mission is to destroy it. And so they're trying to kind of end the battle early before it even really began. So in Chapter 5, we're jumping to a different part of the story, of where the Jedi Kit Fisto is fighting on the planet of Calamari, which is Mon Calamari, which is an all water planet. So they're having a big issue where there are two races that live on the planet fight each other. And so in chapter 1, we saw Count Dooku shaking hands with these creatures, and those creatures are the ones here that are fighting the good forces, the Republic forces. So here's Jedi Kit Fisto, and he's an amphibious creature, so he can actually breathe underwater and above. So now we see all the Star Cruiser parked above on the water that we've only before seen fly. And all the spaceships were based kind of on fish designs. So I think that one kind of looks like a manta ray squid type creature. Because the whole fight takes place underwater, we really wanted to feel a little bit more aquatic. And here he uses his force powers to stop the creatures, the droids, and divert lasers and missiles. And so the Mon Calamari ride these creatures, and we wanted to make them different. So the droids ride in like an underwater bikes to make it all technology based, and so Mon Calamari use these eel creatures, so they're more organic. And this is kind of a lobster cannon tank creature or a machine. And it fires these giant lasers they're so huge they can destroy a Star Cruiser. But of course, they're not powerful enough to stop a Jedi Master like Kit Fisto. And here he forms a underwater Jedi Force bubble, and it's powerful enough to break through all this metal. And it dropped down far enough, but such a huge machine, it created this giant explosion. So the war down on the planet of the Moonless continues. And we're going to see kind of the forces, the good forces kind of are working their way in. And we kind of establish a little bit of the space battle that is happening above the city, where we see some cool Anakin action. Here now we're back on the Banking Clan planet, Moonless, where the battle continues. And these are giant cannons that are really breaking their way through the evil reinforcements. So in this command center is where these are the IG Banking Clan. And so they have a hologram vision of the whole battle and what's happening. So it's kind of their futuristic virtual map. And so that explosion was the same explosion that we saw in Chapter 3. So we're kind of playing with the timeline a little bit.
It must be their artillery. What are we going to do? What are we going to do?
And this is the introduction of Dirge, which is this kind of evil bounty hunter that Dooku sent to help them out. And he's kind of a mysterious alien creature. In future episodes, we really see what he really is inside. And he's got a kind of a motorcycle gang of IG robots on speeder bikes. So now they're leaving the bottom of the command center to head out into battle and to So Dirge is the commander of this gang. So he's kind of the toughest and the baddest. So they're really overpowering the clone troopers. And their speeder bikes are from Return of the Jedi, where they kind of flew them through the forest. So here comes Dirge and his gang of robots. And we did a lot of jousting, which is kind of very medieval. Instead of horses, we're using the speeder bike jousting. So we thought it would be really great to do a gladiator fight, because we're all big fans of old-style gladiators. So we ended up using a lot of the characters from the Star Wars universe as gladiators. And so this is the Solar Sailor that was introduced in Attack of the Clones in Star Wars Episode 2. And it's Count Dooku's sailor from the end of the movie. And here's one of his henchmen who's come up with everything to show Dooku.
Indeed.
And so this is the first chapter where we kind of jumped around in the way we tell the story. So this is the first introduction of the kind of the B story that happens throughout the episodes. So we had a lot of fun doing all these different creatures from the Star Wars universe, and we ended up even making up some of our own, kind of based on other ones. It was one of the, I think, funner assignments for some of our designers. So this is the introduction of Asajj Ventress, who's the main villain for the rest of the episodes.
Great skill of infiltration. My host would applaud your abilities posthumously. However, I am not looking for a spy.
So it's really cool to work with a kind of a cool warrior female character versus a lot of either robots or monsters. Because sometimes it'd be a lot of fun to kind of animate, a female woman. And we see her when she does all that blurry runs. That's kind of her, because she's got force abilities also. So that's how fast she runs. That her feet are all blurred out. And again, her using her force powers to control the rocks. So she would be a formidable foe for our Jedi. And now she's got 2 sabers. And there's that force run again. And kind of this last few scenes were kind of really based on some more samurai feel action, where kind of 2 people face off, and there's only one strike, and you don't even see it, and then we just see the result.
Strong in me, for I am Sith.
Chapter 7 picks up directly right after Chapter 6, and so she, of course, claims that she is the Sith, but Dooku, of course, disagrees with her. And here we see Dooku use his great powers of the Force, because he's really, almost as powerful as Yoda himself. who is one of the most powerful Jedi.
This can be imitated, however. You lack a vital quality found in all Sith. Sith have no fear, and I sense much fear in you.
You are a foolish old man who knows nothing of the dark.
And her voice was really fun. We really are kind of fans of Eartha Kitt, who was an old actress. And so we want to give it this really cool, scratchy quality to it, almost like she's cat-like. And here Dooku's using his Sith lightning to kind of semi-destroy her. These are some of my favorite backgrounds that we came up with, some of my favorite environments. It's like this huge rock penthouse that Dooku stays in when he goes to this gladiator world. So we added some elements of modern art as well as, this cavernous feel to it. And this kind of creepy reddish color. I was really happy with the way it turned out. And one of the most fun things to do about Star Wars is to do lightsaber fights, of course. Ever since I was a kid, that's kind of, what we acted with and what, we kind of role-played as when we played. And so even though this episode is really simple, it's so much fun to do because it was just doing really fun fighting choreography. And if you see, it's really hard to see in the corner, up in the left corner there, that was the hologram of Darth Sidious watching, which we find out at the end of the episode. But I thought it was fun that, a few people might pick up on it because it's not totally clear. And of course, she's no match for Dooku because he's so powerful.
So finish it.
We have other plans. Have you been watching, Master?
I have indeed, Lord Tyrannus. The child's
And also, another really fun voice was the voice of Darth Sidious because it's so creepy and scratchy. And we actually even made it a little bit more cartoony than the normal voice in the movies, just because it was such a natural, fun, melodramatic, creepy voice.
Sidious.
What is your bidding?
A Jedi named Anakin Skywalker. You will find him.
We gave him lots of pointy, jaggedy, messed up teeth to make him even feel creepier.
They must be punished.
And the little spider hologram creature is really fun. I think that was from Phantom Menace. They used a similar one. And he gives her the curved Sith lightsabers as we saw introduced in episode 2.
It matters not. She is merely an instrument to bring forth the eradication of the Jedi.
And so the battle picks up right where kind of episode 4 left off, with Dirge and his gang of robot motorcycles destroying all the cannons. And so, of course, Obi-Wan sees Dirge. And so one of the first concepts that we had when we started to develop this, to do the Clone Wars, is to do jousting Jedi. And Paul Rudish did this really cool drawing of, he's the art director, one of the art directors, did this really cool drawing of Obi-Wan Kenobi with a joust on a speeder, on kind of like a modified speeder. So that was an instant hit with everybody. So we made, this one of the story arcs is jousting Jedi versus droids on speeder bikes. And some of my favorite sound effects of just kind of like some of the speeder bikes from Return of the Jedi. Those sounds are so cool. So we tried to leave as much room as we can for them. This is also really fun to do because I think we were just kind of burned out on all the fighting of all the wars, and we wanted to do more kind of one-on-one battle. So this was a great opportunity to do this giant kind of, creature versus Obi-Wan Kenobi. And we had a lot of like kung fu spinning moves and, a little bit more martial arts flavor. I think maybe just after working on Samurai Jack, we couldn't help ourselves. So his saber is no match for this strange creature, Dirge. He's shooting these kind of poisonous darts, but Obi-Wan's force powers are pretty strong, so he can deflect everything. And here he's got these cool deflection shields that come out of his arms. So he's got all the gadgets, kind of like a Boba Fett or Jango Fett. But the laser shields is always something that I was really fond of. And so those are the ARC troopers. So they the timeline kind of catches up to them from episode 3, and it hooks up to this. So they're on top of that tower. And here we see that, of course, Dirge is not destroyed. He is very much alive. So here comes Obi-Wan Kenobi, and this kind of takes off directly after Obi-Wan left from Chapter 8. And this background coming up right here was probably maybe like 10 feet tall because it had so many levels of him driving by. It was just this giant piece of artwork. And here they're the same ARC troopers that we kind of left off from Chapter 3. So we did a lot more time jumping in this episode. And so here we have the ARC troopers coming down again with Obi-Wan now. And these little destroyer droids are from Phantom Menace. They're really one of our favorite ones. We wanted to use them as much as we could, even though we ended up not using them that much. But we were all really big fans of them.
General. Mercy, I beg you. I am merely a banker.
That is entirely up to you and your unconditional surrender.
And so here comes Dirge. And he was we really wanted to get him beyond with just the, like a normal bounty hunter type of idea. So we came up with this idea of kind of making him more like a special effect or more monstery. So we wanted to take off the armor and really expose him who he is inside. So of course we did this kind of monstrous, gelatinous, he's like all made out of muscles and veins. And I wish we had more time to add more detail on him because we really wanted to go all out. I mean, this was hard enough as it was, but we wanted to have stuff like dripping out and different liquids always oozing and random parts of his body kind of bubbling. But we kind of just settled on oozing veins. I really like, he was one of my even though he was so hard to draw, he was one of my favorite characters because it's just kind of so fun to draw this really extreme, crazy thing rather than, for a while now we've just been drawing kind of clone troopers and droids. So we were able to let loose organically a lot more. So it was more of a challenge, but definitely more fun doing. And the wet and oozy Obi-Wan Kenobi I thought was always funny.
Ah, yes. I believe you were surrendering.
So Chapter 10 takes place back in space above the planet Moonlist, which we established in Episode 2, or in Chapter 2. And so this is kind of the classic shot from Star Wars with a giant Star Cruiser coming in. And all of these starfighters are all done in computer. And this shot right here, this pan was, I think, the longest pan I've ever worked on. And what I mean by pan, it's a giant drawing of a background of this whole spaceship. And it reached from one of the offices, then maybe about 50 feet down to the elevator around the corner of where we work. And, it took me like a couple hours to make my way through it and figure it all out. And actually, it was even twice as long as what we have here, and we had to cut half of it out for time. But it became a really fun shot to look at.
Commander, enemy reinforcements coming in .35.
Clear out, Go 2.
And these are all the Geonosian fighters that were introduced just slightly in Attack of the Clones. But we really like the way they look. With these kind of long, angular, kind of almost like a fork. It's really a fun design to work with. And here we really see, in this episode, we really explore Anakin's great abilities as a pilot. You know, because he was such a great pilot in Phantom Menace as on the pod racers. We really wanted to explore how cool he can drive his starfighter.
I know.
And all the sound effects really turned out tremendous on this. There's nothing that makes Star Wars feel like Star Wars than really cool sound effects.
No targets.
Do it now, Trooper!
This is also one of my favorite sequences, just to have kind of that. I'm a big submarine fan, and I really like the heat-seeking missile idea, or a missile that's kind of locked into a target. So this is really fun for me to work on and to watch. And of course, Anakin driving in, and again, we show how good of a pilot he is, that he can drive through this enclosed space with missiles following him and kind of beating the explosion out.
Skywalker, almost all the gun platforms are destroyed, and only... Wait, what's that?
It's always really hard to work with scale, because we really wanted to make these space stations to be really huge. So this is the introduction of our mysterious fighter, who we of course know as Asajj. So in the last chapter, in chapter 10, we really did a big, kind of real huge space fight with lots of ships and Anakin fighting everybody. So in this one, in chapter 11, we wanted to focus in on just the fan ship and the Anakin's ship, Asajj Ventress' ship. And so really tried to do a lot of cool, fun stuff. And as I was watching it when I first saw it, and even when I was looking at the storyboard, I realized how cool it would be maybe to have it be with just sound effects and no music for the first kind of big fight of it. And it really turned out great, because we could really able to really focus on the sounds and really feature them without having the music kind of getting in the way.
I have you now.
And so we were also trying to do like a lot of really cool kind of Star Wars-y feeling type shots. And for Star Wars, there's a lot of like really cool flybys, and we try to focus in on that. And we do like this shot. This particularly is one of my favorites, because it just feels like Star Wars, and everything kind of feels slower. And for the 3-minute episodes, this one seemed to be a little bit longer, because we were able to play out one idea. That's a really cool sound that Eric Foreman, who's our sound effects editor, he did this great. It's almost like a plane sound, but he kind of futzed it a little bit and made it sound really cool. And of course, I think now that we've done 10 episodes, I realized that whenever we have a little bit more character interaction, it always made it for a better episode than just straight action. So this one was a really nice capper to this episode, to have Obi-Wan and Anakin kind of argue, and that made their relationship even stronger.
Under control? I don't think so. Your place is with your squadrons, young one, not chasing one ship through the city streets.
Just again, all the sound design on this one, I think, is what's one of the most key factors. And we argued a lot about showing Asajj Ventress here or not, or saving her until chapter 17. And so we decided it's been a long time to keep this ship mysterious, so we decided to show her. That kind of won the argument. So that shot was added a lot later.
He's not losing us.
Anakin!
Master, the battle up here is more than one. I can handle this.
Do not follow that ship! Anakin, do you hear me? Do not follow that ship! That is an order!
We tried to push the expressions on Anakin as much as we could to really get that kind of silent frustration. I think we probably could have went a little bit more.
You have the coordinates.
Yes, General.
Take a squad and follow him.
And that's the Blockade Runner from, I think from episode 2, from Attack of the Clones. As it goes ahead and tracks Anakin. So for chapter 12 and 13, this is one of my favorite stories that we kind of came up with. And one of the first things that came to my mind when we started doing the Star Wars thing was the Clone Wars, was this thing called the seismic tank. And I was just really excited about the idea, so we started to make story structure based upon that little idea. So we came up with this kid, and it really always felt kind of real Star Wars-y about having a kid be, you know, it's kind of like Luke Skywalker from the original Star Wars. And it was just kind of fun to start it that way, and we tied the kid into the whole episode. And then these 2 episodes, 12 and 13, were designed just for cool Jedi action. So we do as many like cool ideas, and we picked Mace to do it because he's one of the strongest next to Yoda. So it'd be really good to really just go all out and see a Jedi kind of use all his powers. And the battle droids are also some of my favorite, the big super battle droids. And they're kind of, they've got a little like kind of cool, kind of a retro feel to them because they're kind of blocky. And we worked on the sound for the seismic tank for a long time because TV only limits you to how much sound you can really have. Well, in the theaters, it could just be booming. So we tried to make it as deep and heavy and giant as we can. And it's just real, it's always real comical, but I thought that's one of the great appeals of it, that it's this giant thing and it's going to destroy everything in its sight. Doesn't matter if it's its own troops or the enemy's troops. And here you'll notice the sound dropping, and that was kind of to make room for the giant sound, because we're always trying to build contrast when we're doing this stuff. And so if I know I'm going to have a big loud moment, I'm going to have a very, very, very quiet moment before it. And please, please watch this episode loud, because TV speakers just can't handle the sound that we've put on it. So it made a giant hole in the ground. It was just real funny.
Fire at will. Roger, roger.
And just to get the scale, we're always working on scale, and to get the drama between real little tiny things and giant things. So for the Clone Wars series, there was a lot of black little dots representing hundreds of soldiers. So in our little storyboards, we always see it. So chapter 13, I think, is my favorite chapter in all the 20 that we've done. And for the sole reason that we really just focus on a Jedi using his powers without his lightsaber. And I was just really excited about doing this episode, and especially seeing the way it turned out, I was really happy about. And now we really get to see the full extent of the powers of the Jedis. And so we also tried to bring in more martial arts too. So the guy who did the storyboard, Brian Andrews, he's actually like used to be the 6th ranked in the United States Wushu champion, which is kind of like Kung Fu. So he did the board, and he did all these poses, and I did a few poses. And we really just tried to push all the different choreography. And we really see how powerful Mace is here. And there's something very kind of Death Star feeling to this giant thing, especially when we're inside of it. I think some of the angles that we picked are very similar to the Star Wars movie. The big Jedi bomb that he unleashes. And this is one of my favorite parts also, where we decided to, because we wanted to keep escalating the action instead of him just punching it. So we had this idea about him putting a force blast so that the whole insides of the robots blow up. And we're always kind of nervous sometimes about these ideas, that they might be a little crazy. But we never really had any problems with him. And he created a force bubble to kind of withstand the power of the seismic tank that comes in from off screen. And those little droids are always fun to destroy because they're very rickety. And so we knew we wanted to tie in and to finish up the story with the little kid. So the original way we did the story, it didn't have the kid at the very end. Like, after the tank explodes, he just goes, yeah! And then that was it. And then Mace would say, this party's over. But that kind of didn't feel right. Like, I really wanted to bring out the idea that Mace is a hero among the Jedi, almost. And so I came up with this little sequence where the kid offers water to him. And some people might remember that there's a kind of a similar scene in the commercial, an old Coca-Cola commercial, where Mean Joe Green is walking out and this kid offers him a Coke. And we all kind of laughed about it, but the more I thought about it after, I was like, yeah, that's kind of cool. And it just kind of plays Mace as this cool hero, and it kind of connects him to the kid. In the Star Wars lore, there was always talk about this planet called Ilum, where the caverns of the Jedis are. And what that is where they get the powers for the lightsabers, the crystals that make the lightsabers work. So once we were thinking of other stories to do, that idea was always really strong. So we decided, and before a Padawan becomes a Jedi, they always go on this pilgrimage where they have to build their own lightsaber. So we always thought that's such a really cool idea, and so we decided to do an episode about it. So here we have the inner workings of a lightsaber and Padawan and her master putting it together. And these two Jedis were just barely seen in the second movie, Illuminera and Barra Sophie, but they were just so cool that we couldn't resist but using them and to really explore it. And so here we see the caverns. We wanted to make the caverns even more illustrious with gems and stuff, but just a lot of time constraints, we had to back off a little bit.
They are here.
So, of course, the bad guys want to destroy the Jedi caverns so that there could be no more lightsabers made. And when we picked the voice, because these characters didn't talk in the movies, and when we picked the voices, there was something very ethnic and Asian, kind of African-looking about these. So we kind of picked these weird, scratchy voices with some kind of hint of a weird accent or a strange dialect. It was also very fun to change locale for a change and to have more, see more different Jedi. That's one thing that I enjoyed about the movies is seeing all the different Jedi that we've never seen before. And that was one of the funnest things we did in the Clone Wars is we really got to have fun with different types of Jedi rather than just like Anakin and Obi-Wan. So they're using their force powers to stop all the rocks. And then here we tried to get a little feeling where we tried to support the master-Padawan relationship. So here sees what the master is doing, so she tries to follow. And one thing I forgot to mention, there was some biography written about them, that they kind of fight in unison. So most of the fights in this episode, when they're fighting together, they're doing it at the same time in unison. So for Chapter 15, we definitely wanted to do a story with Padme, because we kind of introduced her in Episode 1. So this is Captain Typho, who we just saw for a little bit in Attack of the Clones. And so we brought him in, and of course, we wanted to do some Jedi mind tricks. So it was fun to do. So there's Padme and Captain Typho. And when we were designing Yoda, he kind of kept getting cuter and cuter. And I kind of resisted it at first, but then I realized, Yoda was like first a puppet in Empire Strikes Back. And I let it happen because all the drawings seemed to be going that way.
Captain, make best possible speed to Ilum.
Yes, milady.
And of course, the original voice of C-3PO did the voice here, Anthony Daniels. And he was great to work with because he even fixed a lot of our dialogue. And just like if we say, like if C-3PO said, "I'm going out of my mind," he would say, "Oh, I'm going out of my circuits." And it was really great. And so it was great to have him, to have an original voice. And we wanted to push the relationship between Padme and Yoda, kind of like a sweet, almost not kind of like a father-daughter thing, but she's always very concerned for him.
For the rescue to succeed. Call you I will. The persistence I require.
So I thought it was kind of really cute, the relationship between them two. And so we wanted to set up to do a lot of cool Yoda action. And we wanted kind of to follow along with what the movies kind of established, but to bring a little bit more into it. So it was really fun to see Yoda move around so fast and do so much action. And but we couldn't help but put a lot of comedy in, like all this business, because he's kind of he's serious definitely, but he definitely has some comedy, like what we saw in Empire Strikes Back. So we didn't want to take ourselves too seriously on this stuff. We see how powerful Yoda is without kind of overstating his physical action, because he still has so much control of the Force. And here we go up to the ruins of the cave from where we established at the end of episode 14, where the two Jedi were kind of buried alive, and he starts to rescue them. So, of course, in Chapter 15, we left off with Yoda walking off and getting into trouble. And so, in the beginning, Padme is concerned for him. And this was really fun to do because a lot of Star Wars is comical, is funny. So we definitely wanted to do something with a little bit of humor, and we thought that this episode with Padme and the droids would do it. So and everybody was all excited all year since we started to do something with the droids. So this is was our opportunity. And the most exciting thing about this episode was that we actually got the real voice of C-3PO, Anthony Daniels, to do the voice, and he was great. It was such a great experience because he really knows 3PO, of course, because he is 3PO. So he kind of corrected our dialogue a little bit, and he was just a pleasure to work with. And of course, R2 was such a pleasure to work with too, because he did all the great things on cue, and everything he said was perfect.
What is it, R2?
It seems
seems there are multiple objects approaching from that direction.
Where?
And it was hard. It's kind of hard to do humor sometimes for Star Wars because it's not kind of wacky humor. It's kind of real subtle character humor. So we had to really pick out a right idea for it. And C-3PO yelling, "Oh!" is really what I think we all wanted to hear. Padme had a lot of... She was kind of a real difficult character because she was very difficult to draw. So we did a lot of different sketches with her because she's kind of, beautiful, but she's kind of a warrior. So we had to get just the right mix.
3PO, could you get my coat?
Of course, Miss Padme. I must be out of my circuit.
And I scanned a lot of John Williams music to kind of find the right comical cue. And Jim Venable did this really nice take on it.
Help! Help! I've been buried alive!
Thanks, 3PO.
Oh, it was a pleasure, Miss Padme.
What is it, R2? More droids?
Yeah, it was really a real fun, kind of lighthearted episode. And when we first saw it, we were kind of not so excited about it. But once we put the R2 dialogue on it, it became really, became with so much more personality. It was really much more fun to watch and just to hear R2. And when I was listening to a lot of the sound effects for R2, we kind of scanned through different lines because each little beep and bleep, of course, means something. So it was a lot of fun listening to all the library, all the possibilities how R2 can talk. And here he deploys the hologram of Dooku's orders to the droids. So chapter 17, we started to really get into back to the Anakin story. And it was starting to really we knew we were going to do 17, 18, and 19 as kind of the finale to the whole thing, and 20 is the big capper. So we wanted to see what kind of setup we could do, and we decided to have some more fun with the clone troopers. I guess working on Samurai Jack and Dexter all these years, I think we always want to stick something funny in. So even though this humor was a little bit darker, it was still it's fun to do. We did a lot of kind of inspired jungle things from, I think, an episode from Empire Strikes Back, because you're doing kind of a jungle, but we treated it a little bit different. And there's the Blockade Runner from, if you remember at the end of Chapter 11, Obi-Wan sent the troopers off to follow Anakin because he disobeyed orders and followed the ship out. So, of course, Anakin is very aggravated that Obi-Wan is treating him like a little kid. And so we really had a lot of fun with making a lot of great jungle noises. And Eric, the sound effects guy, I think he went out and he recorded all types of different birds. And some of these weird sounds aren't even birds. Some of them are like, I think, a fox and some other creatures, but they had a really cool sound to it, like an alien bird. And so, of course, Asajj is using her force powers to kind of wipe out all the troopers so she could have Anakin on a one-on-one battle. This is one of my favorite episodes because it's just crashing clone troopers into trees and stuff, which is real fun.
Trooper? Trooper.
So again, the sounds of the jungle are real specific to different things that we've used before. And again, if you notice here in this episode, it's very light on music. I think there's the only music cue is at the very end. So it's really great right here. I think, of course, the music started. It's really great because you can have so much detail and so much atmosphere and so much mood with just sound effects, not even using music. And I really explored that a lot here to add a lot more tension. And of course, the reveal of Asajj Ventress. And we see Anakin's robot hand. I really like that we decided to stick with it, and I decided to put a glove on it because I think it's a really cool graphic. There's never enough fights because even though maybe we would draw 30 poses, it still feels short. So after the board was turned in, the storyboard was turned in on this episode, I went through and I added maybe 5 to 10 to 15 extra poses on each kind of big fight scene, just to make it really kind of juicy and extra cool. And if you notice in this one, it's all music, because it kind of became just kind of like a straight action. So there was pretty much almost all music throughout the whole episode. While in Chapter 17, we really focused on the atmosphere. And if you kind of ran these back to back without commercials in between, it would really feel there would be a great contrast between the two. And she uses her force powers to break the branch. And so we kept having the fight escalate higher and higher into the treetops. And this artwork coming up, when they're kind of running and jumping, probably stretched out maybe 15 feet. Even though it goes by so fast, it has so much to it because of the speed that it was this giant piece of artwork. It was cool. We worked quite a bit on the sound to have the lightsabers kind of echo out in the forest. It was kind of a cool idea. This fight, I think, was about maybe 45 poses, just because it was so intense and long. I think this one was too. Just spend, and it goes by in seconds, but I would spend maybe 3, 4, 5 days sometimes breaking it all down, making sure it worked, and doing the timing for everything. We spent a lot of time also, Eric did, on the flying sound effects, because how does it sound when Jedi fly around? So he kind of did these cool flybys. So she used her force powers to push him and dig him through the rocks. And now we cut the music, so from here through like the first maybe minute of episode 19, it's silent again, so you could really feel the rain. And we had this idea about having the rain hit the lightsaber and the steam comes out. And we all laughed at it and thought it was so cool. And I think it's one of the highlights of this episode and of the beginning of episode 19. So chapter 19, we began, of course, the way we left off chapter 18, with the rain hitting the sabers. And here we really kind of definitely played up on more of that idea. And we wanted to build this kind of almost samurai duel standoff between the two warriors. And we added a lot of extra highlights and detail on the beginning of this sequence to make it feel even more dramatic. This scene always seemed real painful because we really had her bouncing off the rocks a lot. Again, sound design came in so important in these episodes because we do go back and forth between music and sound, and it is amazing. I'm still amazed after doing all these cartoons that sound effects can just do so much for the atmosphere and mood of a cartoon. Even though music is equally powerful, but it is really important how much sound can do. And of course, hearing a lightsaber sound effect just kind of sells it, even though it's just a drawing of a lightsaber. And here, Asajj gets mad, of course, and she uses her force powers but Anakin runs right through him, and he just gets his shirt ripped off. We always thought that was a pretty funny idea. And so of course they're fighting on a pyramid, kind of where some ancient alien race lived that we don't know about. And so for dramatic effect, we wanted to stage the ending fight right in front of this giant red planet. So it'd be like red. The color red is very intense, and it makes things psychologically very powerful. So, and that the music comes in there, which is Anakin's kind of destruction theme, where he's turning slowly to the dark side. And the sequence coming up here when he's attacking her was completely different when we first did it. It was in each little scene was about 3 to 4 hits before we cut. And what I did was I wanted more energy, so I completely intercut it. And then we threw in flashes of Obi-Wan, Yoda, and Liam Neeson's character from the first movie, Qui-Gon Jinn, as them all feeling Anakin slowly losing himself. It was a real big dramatic movement as our climax for the story arc.
Blast him.
Chapter 20 was our biggest challenge, and of course this is the capper to everything. But on top of that, we were also introducing a new character that's actually going to be in the third movie. And so we decided to make it twice as long. So I think it ended up being almost 7 minutes long. And this is Jedi Wolbefman, and he was the Jedi contest winner. And I was always hoping for the Hammerhead character, but because just sort of nostalgia for the first movie. But he won, which is cool. He's definitely a cool character. And so we definitely wanted to fly by this kind of action pretty quick because we wanted to get to the meat of the story, which is the introduction of General Grievous. So here, in the other episodes, we saw that Obi-Wan entered it, and so the timeline is kind of hooks up from episode 9 right to episode 20, to where they captured everybody and they're, finishing it up, wrapping things up. We had a lot of different ways that we wanted to play this, where initially we wanted to do a little bit more wrap up with Dirge, but then we felt like we were just running out of time. And this is Asajj's ship that, of course, Anakin took over because his ship was destroyed. And he's such a great pilot, he's able to fly almost anything.
Never have been fought. I find the Sith's interest in you most troublesome. This is precisely why you must.
And so we kind of started to talk about how are we going to introduce General Grievous. Like we really wanted him to make him really kind of cool and mysterious and dark and not give away too much, but still make him feel like he's a very important character. So we decided to do almost like everybody's talking about him first, and then we introduce him. And this is Mr. Beric Dockman, and he's kind of inspired by one of our production coordinators. And here, when he says General Grievous, we futzed it so you could barely hear what he said, just to make it mysterious. And the last split second, you saw Saber come in. So that would be him. So always showing a little bit. And one of my favorite ideas is we storyboarded this first with just caverns. So this whole battle took place almost like in a mountain range type of idea. But then one of the mountain ranges looked like a Star Cruiser. So all of a sudden it snapped in my head, we should have this whole battle take place in like a graveyard of ships where there's this huge Clone Wars and everything crashed all over the place, and this whole episode took place inside the wreckage. And I got so excited about that because I thought it was a great location and one that we've really haven't seen in Star Wars movies. And then we wanted to really utilize a lot of the different Jedi. So this is Ki-Adi-Mundi, who's kind of a pretty important Jedi. Kakruk over there in the bottom left-hand corner. the Jedi with the red face and kind of the horns is Shakti. We saw her in in the episode 2. And so what we had to work with Grievous's voice wasn't a lot, because while we were working on this, they really haven't recorded a dialogue for Grievous yet. So we decided to do this kind of weird mechanical, more high-pitched, gravelly sound, where because of course Darth Vader is more of a deep sounding. We wanted to stay away from the Vader type of sound, so we decided to do a little bit more high-pitched. And doing this whole episode was very nerve-wracking, because we're establishing something that's going to be revealed to everybody later on, and we really didn't have the resources and the time frame to wait until George Lucas figured everything out. So we kind of had to just go with it, and hopefully everything will match at the end. And so the human Jedi, we kind of were inspired by Shaggy from Scooby-Doo, because he kind of freaks out and he can't kind of control himself. And we really wanted to do even more of a Shaggy voice, like, oh gosh! But we decided to stay away from it because it just didn't fit. It became a little too goofy. And that's the other Jedi in the bottom left-hand corner is Tarsier, which is Ki-Adi-Mundi's Padawan. And so here's Grievous. And it's pretty cool, because to have a villain to be in kind of an all-white was a really nice contrast, and it made it a lot more unique. Because of course, if you think of a villain, you think of the cowboys wearing a black hat and the white hats on the good guys, and of course Darth Vader is black, has a black costume. So it was cool to do a villain in white. So we created this really dark environment for him to do all his stuff in. And he's supposed to be kind of the ultimate robot. So not only is he a great fighter, but he also is a great leader. So he's a great general who's kind of risen through the ranks and now controls all the clone armies. And we made him, Lucas talked about how he wanted to become like an insect. So we had him fight in all sorts of things and jump on walls and really have these, because he's got these giant robotic feet, almost like a praying mantis type of thing. So we really had him be a lot quicker, even though he's this giant creature. And the sound effects that Eric did, he used a lot of kind of coils and springs and little kind of revved up, weirded treated engines. So the sound in this is really amazing, because hopefully it'll match when the movie comes out. It'll be kind of similar. And she uses her force powers to block his blow. So again, he can use his feet and all the things, and we just made him a lot more agile, so he can do everything instead of just fight with his hands. You could hear his little robotics working. And Ki-Adi's really not sure what he's gonna do here. We wanted to do more fight, but even with 7 minutes or 6 minutes, we barely had enough time to put kind of this one cool sequence together. We really wanted to do more, but always the time issue.